talking to people on Facebook, but let's see if I am. It says I'm live. Since it says I'm live, I'm going to believe that, even though the internet gods lie to me sometimes. This is Pamela Fagan Hutchins, and you have found your way to the Facebook Live version, or if you're hearing this recorded or watching this recorded, the podcast or recorded video cast versions of Wine, Women, and Writing. Welcome. This is the show where I primarily talk with other authors about their strong female characters, authentic, complex, and often grounded in some wonderful background stories that I try to pry out of the authors. And we do all of this with snoring dogs, occasional oversharing, dives into profanity or TMI or whatever, and have a great time doing it. Before we get started with our guest today, I was going to remind you of two really important things, or three really. One is go out to my website and you can see the upcoming or past shows. Be sure you read the books of the authors that are coming up so we can do this like Pamela's Personal Book Club, right? And next, the giveaway for the labradorite ring, a smaller version of this, that is the Maggie Transform ring from my Maggie trilogy that's in the process of rolling out, only has a week to go. So you need to get out there and enter fast. Last but not least, the release of Dead Pile is next week. So Livewire right now is going on a temporary promotion. Go out and get it on any of the websites where you shop for a super great deal, because we're going to be all about Maggie all the time next week. But today we are all about Sydney Rose Parnell, because we're talking to Barbara Nickless. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Pamela. I'm happy to be here.
We lost. Well, I'm really excited to have you. I first discovered your books. I guess I read the first one on it, and it would have been several years ago now. And because I love a good mystery with a strong female protagonist and a creative, spin, and there was a Malinois, I fell in love with your books. So I've been secretly fangirling you for these last few years. Could you feel it? The vibes in the universe of the fangirl?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. So tell the listeners that may not have followed their instructions to read ahead of time. Tell them a little bit about your Sydney Rose Parnell series.
Oh, I got this idea to write a police procedural that's a little different. I have a railroad cop, and Sydney she's a former Marine. She served in mortuary affairs, processing the dead. And when she came back from the war, she wanted to be as far away from people as she could get and have no interaction. And she had her military working dog canine partner. So they joined the railroad police, and trouble ensued, as it does.
There was several elements of this that I really love. Before we get into Ambush, which is your fantastic new release, just the series at large. The first was, how did you get the idea for using
Moment.
There you go. Yay! Branding, blood on the tracks. That was the first one I read. So if you guys haven't read Ambush yet and you want to start at the beginning, start with Blood on the Tracks. But what gave you the idea, or how did you even become aware of railroad cops?
I read a book called Hobo by Eddie Joe Cotton. I didn't know we still had modern day hobos, and we do. And then I learned about the railroad bulls. And that's what the hobos call the police. They call them railroad bulls or cinder dicks. And I thought, there we go, police procedural, but something a little different.
I loved that from the very beginning. And it wasn't just that element, which, they have crimes, all kinds of crimes, just like any other police officer would, any other officer of the law that runs. But I loved her background. It wasn't just I was a soldier, but it was an element of being in the military that even with a brother as a Marine, I'd never thought about or heard about. So mortuary affairs, what's your in or your tie to that?
Oh, that's funny. I am a military brat, but more Air Force than Marine. So my dad was a World War II bomber pilot. My uncle was a POW. My grandfather was a general. It's in the blood, but I had to learn about Marines. And when I decided, because you have a brother, the Marines they're tough. And I love to tell this story. When I realized I had to go and learn about Marines, I went to my Marine recruiting office. And I walked in, and there was this guy, and he looked like Hollywood's version of the Marine. I mean, he could have starred in his own film. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking around this office, and I'm so excited that I just blurt out, I want to know everything about the Marines. And he looks at me, and he folds his arms, and he kind of, and he says, ma'am, you do know we have an age requirement. I was crushed.
I'm so sorry. Oh, that's horrible.
Oh.
He still looks good.
He still looked good, and he was very kind and helpful.
Oh my gosh. Well, so does your Air Force dad forgive you for writing a Marine into your story? Because those are not always the most loving branches to each other. If my stories.
Yeah, no. He was cool about that. What he had trouble with was, he said, where did you learn to talk like this? How'd you learn to talk like a Marine?
Oh, Dad, I researched that too. It just barely rolls off my tongue. This most recent series I've written, my protagonist used the F word, and my mother had made me promise that would never happen. And I had to warn her ahead of time not to get a red pen out because she's so obsessed with that. So I am feeling you on the parental disappointment. But the mortuary affair. So this gave to me one really rich element of the books, which is a supernatural quality, if you will, in that Sydney sees the dead, right? The dead that she had. And so tell us about that, because it's in the book, it's described with a word I can't remember because, I'm 52, but tell us a little bit about that, because I think it's really fascinating element.
Well, thank you. Once I decided Sydney was going to be a Marine, I heard an interview on NPR with Jessica Goodell, and she was a female Marine who served in mortuary affairs, and she wrote a book called Shaded Black. And so that's where I started to get insights. I'd read a lot of other books written by Marines, mainly, who served in mortuary affairs. But Jessica mentioned that sometimes at night, when they were processing bodies and it was all quiet outside, they could swear they heard people coming down the hallway or people right outside the door. And in Iraq, there's a real belief that these people are the dead walk among us. And so it just seemed like a natural follow-up. The thing that I try to walk a line, so we don't know, is she really seeing dead people, or is this a manifestation of her PTSD? Exactly. And I try not to answer that question.
At times it feels like this is a manufacture. This is her body or her mind doing this to her. And at times it feels like it could be really real. And either way, it's interesting. And I got chills when you talked about it. So what you're doing works with me. And that's the litmus test, right? Did it work for Pamela? And it did.
That's always the thing I ask myself. What would Pamela do? What would Pamela think?
If you think of me as your prototypical reader, at least that works. But I'm probably not so far from it. So with respect to the adventures of Sydney Rose, the thing I mentioned that I also loved about her, of course, is that she brought back from her service days with her a partner that has stayed with her in the railroad police business. So a little bit, if you would, about Clyde.
Oh, Clyde. He's my Belgian Maliniois. Yes, he was a military working dog. He was a dual-purpose dog. So it wasn't his job to smell out explosives. It was his job to find the people who set them. So he was a tracker dog and also a guard dog. And those are the skills he's brought back. He's picked up a few other skills over the course of the book. Sydney's got him in training by the second book, and that really comes to play in the third book. But I'm losing you here 1 second. Let's see, what else do I want to say about him? He came back with PTSD as well. That affects these dogs too. It affects them a little differently. So their relationship was not the best to start.
Yeah, and the way that they she talks to him, but in essence, he talks to her through his mannerisms as well. You know, we're okay, we're okay. It's very symbiotic, the way that they take care of each other and help each other through understanding what each other's going through in their own person and dog way. So
Yeah, that was really a fun relationship to develop.
Well, and so, you know, same question, I guess, with Clyde. What got you into the idea of bringing a service dog into the book? Was that through some of your research into the Marines, or had you kind of planned that all along? Or
no, you're exactly right. So I kind of have this mulligan stew approach. I love research. I think most of us do. And every time I came across something cool, I think, that's going to go into the book. Just like I was making a stew. So by the end, oh my gosh, the amount of research I had to do was shocking. But it was so fun. So yeah, Clyde, we have such a wonderful history of military working dogs, going back through all of our wars. They've been such an important part. And I think people are only now realizing what these dogs are doing and that they really are saving lives.
Yeah, the dogs are absolutely, positively, the things that they can do defy the imagination, especially when I look here at my dogs on the floor who are worthless and think dogs can't be capable of these superhuman feats, but they can. So when I first gravitated towards your book, I'm trying to remember if it was in the there was a dog on the cover, Blood in the Tracks. There may be a small silhouette of a dog.
Very small dog.
I had just gotten my Malinois, and I'm like, well, that's the book I want. Let's, up with Malinois. So I was very, very excited because of those other elements I mentioned that were unique. You found your hook in police procedural, something that wasn't already being done over and over and over, and I was cheering you on. So tell us about Ambush, all that lead up on the series to say, tell us about your new book.
Oh, so I'm supposed to hold that up. I'm learning
up.
this branding thing.
There. Beautiful.
So in the first book, I talk about something that happened in Iraq that really affected Sydney, and I don't explain what happened other than that it involved a little boy. And so my goal had been to carry that through the whole series, kind of like the Smoking Man and oh my gosh, now it's just gone out of my head, the X-Files. But it's really hard to do that when your book only comes out once a year, to keep readers informed and just dribble out a little bit of information. So by the time I hit the third book, I thought I'm just going to resolve this. And that's what Ambush does. So in a lot of ways, it's more of a thriller than a mystery.
Yes.
And it ties up all those questions that I raised in the book.
It did differ. It was not launched by a murder. It wasn't launched by a death. It was a quest. And I had as a reader been hopeful of that after the second book. Was it Dead Stop? Dead Stop, right? I'd hoped that because
again, am I learning?
Oh yeah, look at you go, girl. So I had enough of an introduction in the first two books that by the time you were writing Dead Stop, you were giving us that promise that more was coming, and so I had kind of been hoping and expecting that's where we were going with number 3. Yeah, because Malik, the child's name Malik, had come up repeatedly. So what kind of special research or training did you do to get ready for Ambush? Was there anything in particular?
Oh, I would have loved to have gone to Iran without giving up much of the plot. That was probably not the wisest thing right now. So I had to depend on a lot of written research. I also found some contacts that I really am not going to talk about who are very helpful. So people who in the intelligence community who know a lot of what's going on. So that was a lot of fun. You meet the best people in this gig.
You really do. You really do. But I was reading on your website, and I copied it over here, so I'm going to cheat for a second. But that you also have done some cool things, like you went and did work with the FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team, or you were going to. Has that happened?
So I worked with the guy who headed up CARD out of the Denver office. So I went through the FBI Citizens Academy and made a lot of connections that way. And this gentleman came and talked to us and then was nice enough to keep answering my questions when I bugged him. So yeah, it was amazing. I recommend to anybody who's interested in that or curious about what the FBI is doing in our community is to apply to their Citizens Academy.
I think that's a great idea. And it's actually something that I keep telling myself I'm going to do. And then I keep not doing it. So maybe this will be the thing. Yeah. But you've also done training with the police department's SWAT team, or you helped with their training. How did this work? You were a bad guy, right? Or is this the one I'm thinking about that I read about?
Yeah, you know, sometimes they need volunteers for their training. So in the morning I was a victim. I got to cower in the building and pretend to be injured. And but in the afternoon I got to be a drug dealer. And I was much happier with that because I'm kind of I like to be proactive, not reactive. So they had a little house set up and we were all in there doing what drug dealers do, sort of pretending to. And the SWAT team would practice bursting in, and then it was kind of up to us. How much did we want to engage them?
So do you find that something like that helps you a lot with your writing, or is it just fun? Or both?
Yeah. It's definitely both. I mean, it's usually helpful. You know, you don't know what it feels like till those guys come in, you know, head to toe in their black with their rifles up, and you don't really know what that feels like until you stood on the other end of it. So it's very helpful.
Did you find your inner badass, or were you pretty much like feeling like, well, yes, sir, Mr. SWAT person that looks like they could kill me? You know, what was coming out of you?
Oh, it changed from minute to minute. So sometimes I was definitely feeling my inner bad. And other times, I'm a very law-abiding citizen. I mean, I'm the kind of person, if I see the police lights flashing in my rear view mirror, I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Is everything okay? Are my plates up to date? Oh no, I'm very law-abiding. So I guess it was fun to channel that darker, that Jungian shadow side.
Yeah, I think that would be a blast. I'm the law-abiding type too. It would be fun to see if I had it in me to, you know, defy.
I bet you do. Yeah.
So another thing that I can't help but think would influence your writing is you've had I want to say colorful past, but you've at least had a diverse past as far as your professional escapades go. Tell us about a few. I don't even know what to say about some of these. You've done raptor. What was it? You've worked with raptors. You've worked with swords. You've been a music teacher. These are all really different.
Yeah, I think all of us have so many paths that our lives could take, and if we get to indulge in some of them, great. So I had my whole corporate thing. I was a technical writer and instructional designer with a big computer firm, but I got to do this other stuff too. And the raptor rehabilitation, that was certainly one of the most rewarding. I worked with a falconer who trained under King George. Oh my gosh, whatever number he would have been, he was the master falconer. So I feel like I sort of trained under the British master falconer by working with this gentleman that I did. And it was so rewarding because the whole goal was to get these birds out into the wild again, the ones that could still fly. But that was scary sometimes too. I mean, because they were wild, they were never trained. And they were usually not happy to be there. So
no, and they have really wonderful defense mechanisms. Those claws and the beak, bad that they are badasses.
Seriously.
So incredibly cool to be part of it. You know, one of the things that I really love about living rurally in Wyoming is the raptors. We have the bulls will like swoop our house, and we have golden eagles and hawks and all, you name it, big birds all over the place, and I love them. So kudos to you for doing that and for putting them back where they needed to be. So you also did, okay, so I'm looking because I can't even, sword something. What the heck were you doing with swords? You were
that was towards the Renaissance Festival. Renaissance festival. Two-handed broadsword, rapiers.
Oh, how fun. So there's a part of you that is dramatic then, you know, the sword fighter, the piano teacher. I would say that there may be a performer in there somewhere.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought of myself that way, but maybe you're right. I think role playing. Don't authors all play roles?
Yes. Do you ever find yourself when you're writing, I do anyway, where, you know, Sydney's having an especially bad day and you get through writing that scene and nobody better deal with Barbara because we've had a bad day and it's still with us, or she has a good day and you're happy for no reason. Very much a role-playing thing.
It is. And when you're
tell me about...
Oh, I had a friend who always said she was coming down with a novel, and you can channel all of that, whatever's going on in your life. And I've noticed my language gets really bad. For example, when I'm in the middle of a book, I don't know why, but
I can understand that. So with respect to Sydney, back to Sydney a little bit, what's next? Are you planning to continue the series for, you know, however long it plays out? Are you in the middle of number 4 or number 5? Where are we in the process of the life and times of Sydney? I am in the middle of
number 4. It's called Dawn to Darkness, and Sydney's career has taken a bit of a change, and she's not sure she's fully on board with that. So we'll see how things shake out after this book. After the 4th book, I'm probably going to write a standalone. So that's my plan right now. We'll see how it goes.
It is challenging when you take one character and do a series on them, I would think. But personally, I do 3 at a time because of that phenomenon, because I start to say, I don't know where to take this person next, because they become a person to you and you want them to be real and complex and authentic and growing or whatever they are. And it's nice to take a break from them so that you can have time to regroup on that. How much of Barbara is in Sydney?
Very little. The thing that Sydney was for me, my family had been through a lot, and I actually developed post-traumatic stress disorder. I didn't know that's what it was. And so Sydney was my way of healing. It was right after we lost our home in a wildfire, and I was in the middle of what I call the year of shopping dangerously, because we had to have everything. Mm-hmm. So Sydney was the place I could go to kind of process some of that angst.
That's interesting. So while you're not in there with her, the way you were feeling is what you were processing is, and so you healed.
Yeah. And of course, what she went through is far worse than anything I've dealt with. That's the role of fiction. But yeah, I kind of wake up with her in the morning, and we would just get to work trying to fix things.
I think that sounds pretty good. So as I told you when we started, that we would come to this point where it would feel like we hadn't been talking at all, but in reality, we'd been talking a very long time, and people were like, when will these women shut up? And we are about to come to that point. Though it does feel like I could talk all night. I keep peppering you with questions about Sydney and Clyde. Tell us about where people can go to find out more about you, and whether you have any events or anything coming up you'd like to tell anyone about.
Sure. So the best place to reach me is through my website, www.barbaраnickless.com. I don't have anything but private book groups coming up until the fall. I'm sort of put myself in lockdown because I've got to get that book done. I've got 3 months. So I'm going into hibernation after this, Pamela. But I do hope people, if you enjoy the book, or reach out to me. I love to hear from readers.
Excellent, excellent. And for those that have not yet Googled Barbara, the Nickless is Nickles. It's like without a Nick less.
Exactly.
And so be sure and check out Ambush Start with Dead on the Tracks, run the table. You will really enjoy it. And not just because there's a Malinois in it. So before we go through my normal wrap up sequence, well, as we start it, you all know that I must say, I'm duty bound to say that this is a solely owned and copyrighted production of Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. And I'm Pamela Fagan Hutchins, and this is Wine, Women, and Writing. I'll be back again this week, rescheduling with Meredith Wild and her Red Ledger series because the internet broke in Florida last week. So we're having to try again. And so go out and grab a copy of that. Next week will be Kay Kindle. And then that's what I have in store for you guys. Don't forget to pick up your promo copy, your discount copy of Livewire, and enter the ring giveaway. Other than that, I can't think of a single thing to do except to thank Barbara very much for being here. I really appreciate it and enjoyed it.
Thank you. I love talking to you.
And to tell all of you guys that I hope you have a super great rest of your week, and go out and read some good books already. Why don't you? Next time, guys. Bye.